Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining our webinar today. My name is Jess Tersh. I'm a research analyst at Child Care Aware of America, and I'm here with Dion Dobbins, the Director of Research here. Today we're going to be giving you a little bit of background and introducing you to our new child care licensing database. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. We will be recording this session, and it will be available in the resources section of our database towards the end of this week. We are planning to have lots of time for questions at the end of the session. So please submit questions via the questions box or the chat box. As I said, we'll take some time at the end of today's webinar to answer your questions. Just a few more notes. So today we're doing a preview of the findings and of the database. We're officially launching our database tomorrow. We are still working on inputting some of the data, so we've got a few states that are missing and a few resources left to upload. So if you are looking for something in particular, if you don't see data for your state yet, please check back at the end of the week. We are hoping to have all of the resources and all of the state data inputted by the end of this week. So with that, I will let Dion take us through a little bit more of the background to this database.
Thanks, Jess. And Jess will then, after I do the background, she's actually going to take you through a state so you can see how the database is laid out and how user-friendly it is. So I know I'm preaching to the choir when we talk about the importance of child care licensing. We know that we've got 11 million kids under 5 spending lots of time in child care. And we also know that licensing requirements really are the minimum acceptable health and safety standards. And it's important to effectively enforce them to make sure that providers and states are accountable for the licensing that they're giving out. And we know that we really want to make sure as an organization, our mission and our vision is to make sure that children are in quality child care and quality, affordable, accessible child care. So quality is a big piece of that. So we really want to make sure that we understand what's happening across the state and where children are and how their child care is being overseen at the state level. Go to the next one. So as you know, for more than 10 years, we have worked in the area of licensing, child care licensing. And as you know, as we provided scorecards and state rankings on different program requirements. We did benchmarks, and we talked about best practices and program oversight and operations. Every other year, we would do these reports. One was we can do better, and one was leaving children the chance. Every other year, one would be on family child care providers, and the other would be on center-based providers. And we would be able to share where states were and rank them and give an overview of how each state was doing. We loved doing that work, and in 2013 and 2012, which were our last 2 reports, we talked a lot about what states are doing. And while states were making progress towards ratings on a lot of the program requirements, we know that no state earned an A grade, and even the Department of Defense had a B. And we had over at least 20 states that received failing grades according to the rubrics that we had created. But the nice thing about that work was when we saw the new law that was passed for Child Care Development Block Grant in 2014, many of the issues that we always sort of highlighted and made sure we included in our rubrics around licensing and ranking were included in the new law, which was great. But it made us realize that we needed to rethink and shift our work around licensing so that we looked at licensing in a different way and help states talk to us about the fact that they didn't necessarily need the ranking right now, but they wanted to be able to get a sense of where they were with regard to best practices and sort of national standards around child care health and safety regulations and where they need to go. So one of the things we decided to do was create an online database that was easily accessible and quickly updatable, because another thing that used to happen was we do our reports and things change so rapidly and so quickly. A lot of times things would be out of date very quickly. So this is going to be a live database with the option to update it as we get information from you in the field. So we'll be relying a lot from you. But also this online database will be connected. I mean, the licensing that we're looking at for states will be aligned with what we're Caring for Our Children Basics, which many people think of as the national standard for licensing for child care health and safety requirements. So if you turn to the next one. What we did was we took each state's licensing standards and for child care homes and for center-based and aligned them with Caring for Our Children Basics. As you know, the Caring for Our Children Basics is founded on Caring for Our Children third edition, which is a much longer, extensive document. Right now we focused on the basics, and these represent the minimum health and safety standards for any place children are cared for outside the home. They come from, I think the original intent was for the Department of Health and Human Services to have some document or understanding of health and safety standards that could be looked at across all kinds of early childhood settings. And so it's not seen necessarily as what's needed for high quality, but it is seen as what is needed to prevent harm to children. And it's not federally mandated, but a lot of people, a lot of early childhood organizations see this as the place to go for looking at high quality and really hoping to see that we have one standard across the country for early childhood and education. So our database will look at the standards that are in the basics, Caring for Our Children Basics, including staffing, program activities for healthy development, health promotion and protection, nutrition and food services, facilities, supplies, equipment, and environmental health, play areas and playgrounds and transportation, infectious diseases, and policies. So I'm going to turn it back over to Jess, who's going to tell you a little bit about what we did as we created this database, and then take you through some of a state where you can see how the database works.
Great. So this was a huge effort, I have to say. We had a terrific team of research analysts and their supervisors pulling the data. They collected the data. It was a huge qualitative data pull from the state licensing manuals themselves. There was a great emphasis on the quality and inter-rater reliability of the data from the supervisors to the research assistants on the data team. There was a huge amount of discussion between the team members, between the folks pulling the data, our compliance experts here, just to ensure that everyone was on the same page and the data was being pulled correctly. State-level data was independently reviewed by team members and then discussed with researchers. Supervisors were pulled in to review as necessary. Items that were reviewed with less than 80% of agreement were immediately flagged and discussed as a team until there could come to some kind of consensus on them. And RAs maintained a level of 80% accuracy in order to remain on the data collection team. So throughout, there were continuously checks on the data, checks on the folks pulling the data to ensure that there was a high level of reliability of the data that was pulled. On entering the data into the database itself, data is being randomly checked by supervisors to ensure that everything, all of the standards are being maintained. So we have a few quick screenshots of the licensing database before we walk through it. The site was designed to be easily navigable and user-friendly for anyone who's interested in looking at this site. Although the site was designed for advocates and policymakers, basically anyone can navigate to this site and check out how their state's regulations are aligning with Caring for Our Children's Basics. The site itself is built as a content management system, which allows our research team here a great deal of flexibility to make real-time changes and to be continuously updating the database itself. So again, here are a few quick snapshots of how the data will look once we get to checking out the database. So you'll be able to look at each standard by topic, and as Dion mentioned, the topics are staffing, health promotion, nutrition, and so on, again, in alignment with Caring for Our Children's Basics. Once we get to the site itself, you'll be able to see the text of the standards as listed in Caring for Our Children's Basics, as well as listings of recommendations by center-based regulations and home-based regulations as far as how states might bring their licensing regulations in closer alignment with Caring for Our Children's Basics. So with that, I'm going to exit our presentation and head on over to the database itself. So the database is pretty large on this screen here, but what we're looking at is the landing page for the database, brief introduction, as well as a listing of database resources, so we'll check that out first thing. So the resources for the database comprise a number of documents, as well as this is where we'll be putting today's webcast, as well as our report of findings towards the end of this week. So you'll navigate to a particular topic that you're interested in. Now, we're still populating this, so as we go on, we'll continue to build on this list of resources, and you'll be able to check out some of the resources that are available here. If you have suggestions for resources, please do send them our way. We're always interested in hearing what folks think about the website, as well as how we can improve it. Under this general or kind of miscellaneous tab, you'll be able to find links to some resources specific to Caring for Our Children, as well as the Basics edition. So we're going to exit out of the resources section, get back to our landing page. So the first thing you'll do is select a state to check out. So we're going to start with California, pull up their data. So initially you'll take a look at the topics, and you'll be able to navigate to the topics that you're interested in using the arrows to the right and left of the line of topics. You can check out, you can start with staffing, scroll down a little bit further, and we'll see the list of standards under staffing, as well as how the state rated on them. So we can take a look at their kind of snapshot here as far as how they were rated. You can look at another, for example, nutrition and food service. And we can take a look at how they're rating. So we'll go back to staffing. And we can scroll past this and learn more about background screening, for example. So you would do that by going to Learn More, and up pops this window where this top part is the Caring for Our Children's Basics text directly from the guidelines. So we already have an idea of what the text looks like. So we'll scroll down and get some more state-specific data. So what we're seeing is their grade for center and for home does not meet. So what we're scrolling through, we're looking at the specific recommendations to bring the state manuals in closer alignment with Caring for Our Children's Basics. So one of the things that I want to point out about the data here is the listing of data basically represents the pieces of the standards that are not meeting. If, for example, the state did not meet or did not even mention any part of the Caring for Our Children's Basics standard, there would be a notation about that. So Dion will talk a little bit more about, our next steps for looking at benchmarking and being able to show progress towards meeting those goals in the future. But that's just something I wanted to point out, saying that, just looking at this one standard, the state is partially in alignment with the standard, but since they're not in total alignment, we did provide some recommendations for how they could alter their language to be closer in alignment with Caring for Our Children's Basics. exit out of that, we can check another one. Actually, before we move on to another state, I wanted to point out one other helpful tool that we have on this site, the Print Data for All Standards. So this tool is really helpful in navigating from topic to topic and learning more about how a state can become more in alignment with Caring for Our Children's Basics. But if you needed just one or two pages to take with you to show how a state is doing, you would go to Print Data for All Standards of State. And what we have here is a print-friendly document that's showing you exactly where a state meets or does not meet on a given standard under a topic. And again, that's just a quick snapshot of how you can take some of the data with you, at least at this point. Close out of that and go back to our database. And again, you can navigate from state to state. We can check out some other states. As I noted, we're still working on populating about the last 8 to 10 states. Those should be in there by the end of this week. You can check out Alaska. Go to staffing. And again, we can learn more about how they're doing on background screening. Again, with that, Caring for Our Children's Basics text is at the top, and we can take a look at the text underneath.
And also, I'm going to show them, keep it out, that we have the actual registry.
Oh, great. Yeah, thanks so much for pointing that out. So Dion just reminded me that for each of the states, we've included links to their state manuals. So for some states, as you probably already know, there may be 1 or 2 state manuals for child care licensing and regulations, and some states had half a dozen documents that were referenced in checking out their licensing regulation alignment with Caring for Our Children's Basics. One other note about the data in this site, we're already hearing from some reviewers and folks that they've recently updated their regulations in the last week or the last month. And again, Dion will talk about this a little bit more, but we will be updating the database on a rolling basis. We'll be doing keeping updates regularly, but if you know that your licensing guidelines have been recently updated or will be recently updated, please let us know. That certainly helps us keep the database, keep it up to date and keep it living and keeping it really relevant for folks who are jumping on here for the first time. So with that, I'm going to hand the presentation back to Dion. Open that screen back up again.
Thanks, Jess. So we are not done with this. This is our first iteration of this database. We see it as a living database. We want it to continue to grow, to improve, and we're really, really excited about working with you as our membership and as our community to help us make this database the best that it can be. As Jess mentioned, we're going to be doing ongoing quarterly updates. So we'll be doing sweeps, looking for new information from states. But we also want you to let us know when something new happens in your state that might affect where you stand in the database. As Jess mentioned, we've already heard from a couple of states that they either have recently just finished something or they're looking to be finished in the next month or so. Just keep in mind as you look through this that we've been working on this for about 1.5 years. And so if something has happened in the past 4 or 5 months, we may not have the newest information, but that's where we're hoping that you can make sure that we get that newest information. We did our best to make sure we had the most recent, and we often worked when we couldn't find information, we worked with our contacts. Some of you as members we actually connected with to get to the licensing folks in states to get the most recent information. We weren't always successful getting the right person. So there is a possibility that there are some states that have newer information that we need to update and keep in there. So please feel free to reach out to us on that. We are also, over the next year, looking to, we're exploring looking at targeted TA options, and helping states think about where they can shore up their licensing standards to meet or be closer to caring for our children. One of the things we would love to do is talk about progress toward alignment with caring for our children basics. We've talked about moving from more of a ranking system to a roadmap where really you can see where your state was, where your state can go, and how far you've gone over the past couple of years. So we see this as a tool that grows over time, where we can hopefully show progress over time and show it through some data visualization tools. And then finally, one of the big pieces that we would like to do is benchmark. We do know that some states really are excited. We really did appreciate the licensing reports that we used to do and look forward to having some of those benchmarks. But we want to do it in collaboration with you. So one of the things that we are doing after this is launched, we're assembling an advisory panel of subject matter experts. If this is something that you are interested in and would like to be part of, we're looking for people with, of course, CCR&R experience, licensing experience, research experience. If you're a subject matter expert on any of the areas, we would love for you to be involved, because we really want to talk with folks and get a sense of how we're going to weight and rank the information based on the CFOC basics, and how we're going to use that to share some sort of benchmarking document or tool with the community. So we'll begin that. We hope to have that benchmarking system after working with our work group and our advisory panel by this time next year. So we're looking for, to have a year to do this work, as well as, like I said, continuously updating as we get feedback. So we really are hoping that you can be part of this work with us, and we want to be a partner with you on that. So that's pretty much it. I also have Michelle McCready, who is our Chief of Policy, who has just joined us, and I didn't know if there was anything that you wanted to add, because this has been, I think, since I have been here, Michelle's vision to have this online database, so she might have something to add.
Yes, thank you so much. A big shout out to both Jess and Dion, the research team, and the University of Miami for their tireless work over the past year and a half on digitizing these incredibly important standards and all the licensing regulations and in states, but also looking at caring for our children basics document and doing the crosswalk. I just wanted to underscore something that you said, Dion, about this being the first framework, essentially, to get it online, to have a tool that helps states begin to crosswalk where their state licensing standards are and where they potentially could go. We have high hopes for this over the next year. We really hope that you will join us in the journey of figuring out a new benchmarking way of ranking and providing roadmaps to states on licensing. There's a couple questions that I see around other quality standards and indicators like the Quality Rating Improvement System, or QRIS. That's absolutely something we want to consider over this next year about how we fold that in and talk about different quality standards. So just to underscore is we are really excited about this first launch, and we're really excited about the future this year of how we lay out and really make a tool that's helpful for states in understanding their licensing standards and also advocating for quality improvements. I believe, I'm guessing you may have contact information for Jess and Dion if you're interested in joining that licensing work group. We want to make sure you do that and help inform. There'll be a lot of opportunities to help inform where we go with this tool. However, the work group will be helping us create what that benchmarking looks like. So just a thank you to you all for joining us in this, and I'm looking forward to working with you on building the next phase.
Just so you know, the contact information, you can send your feedback and interest in the advisory work group. you can email us at research@usa.childcareaware.org. We'll be compiling information from that. Yeah, let's see, we have a couple of questions.
Yeah, we do have a couple of questions in. The first one, will there be a social media campaign for the new database to accompany the launch?
Yeah, we're going to have like Twitter, Twitter tools, and some Facebook status reports. We'll be pushing it out through Child Care Work, pushing it out through our comms team.
So definitely retweet us and use our tools to get the word out there.
Right, and again, look for those communications at some point tomorrow when we do officially launch the site.
Yeah. Also, when we officially launch it, after this call, as a member, we're going to send you the link to the database. It's live, but only you will have it. So you can play with it.
And the other question, which is a really good question, and one that we had quite a bit of discussion about as we were pulling data, when there are multiple levels of a type of child care, in this example, the question is submitted about multiple levels of family child care, how are those represented in the database? So ladies, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe what we decided to do in the interest of keeping this streamlined is we pulled data from the highest quality child care situation. So for this case, for family child care, it would be the highest quality level of family child care. What we found, and I'm sure what you'll notice as you explore the database yourself, is that there are a whole bunch of does not meet grades across many states and across different standards. So what we found is that we really wanted to compare the highest level of quality that we could find a licensing manual for to Caring for Our Children's Basics. Because if they're not meeting at the highest level, then the lower levels are probably also not meeting.
Yeah, and you'll be able to see when you get in the database what we use, because you'll be able to see. That link will take you to where.
Exactly. Yeah, you'll be able to link to the manuals themselves, and we'll be updating those as we come across the revised licensing manuals. For the states that we know have already done updates, we're going to give our data team a couple days to rest and relax a little bit, and then get right back to updating that data and those links and the 2-pagers and all of that.
I think a really great and interesting question that we can bring to the work group is around when we're thinking about representing each state and the licensing standards, how are we thinking about all the different levels and where they're falling short, especially this often happens around family child care and licensed exempt care. And so part of that group will really be determining how we're representing all of those different types of levels in a way that's meaningful for the state.
Great. Again, if you do have questions, please submit them through the questions or chat box. Those seem to be the only questions we've received so far. But we've got lots of time left, so we'll hang out for a few more minutes to see if anybody else has questions they'd like to submit. Again, if you come up with questions after the call today, or just want to reach out and provide some feedback once you take a look at the database, you can email us at research@usa.childcareaware.org. We'll also include that email address when we send the link to the database out to folks who are registered on this webinar today. And of course, you'll be able to find that email address on the landing page of the database. Again, once you get to the database, if you have questions, it'll be right there so you can send us your feedback. We do have more questions.
There's a question about whether or not we've thought about adding the word CFOC benchmarks, the name of this database? That's a good question. I think we left it general because, as Michelle suggested, we have dreams of adding other kinds of benchmarks and other kinds of standards to this database, and so we left it open at this point. But that's a good question. Things we can consider. Yeah. Will information be available in other languages? No, I don't think
Not
so.
at this time.
Not at this time.
But some of the basic, we're trying to do this with a lot of our different reports and research, is at least translate some of the general overviews into different languages. We also do on our website, I'm not sure if it actually coordinates with the licensing tool, we do have Spanish-English option on our main page so that the primary overview and description you can translate. However, right now we don't have the capabilities to do all of the licensing regulations like that, but hopefully one day.
One day, yeah. This was funded internally, so we didn't really have a lot of funders help with it. So this is something that, like we said, we want to build on, and we're looking to continue this work over time. This is what we were able to do for this year. There's a question about how well known is Caring for Our Children Basics in the broader field. Are there states that already use it as a guide for their work? I am not sure. I think a lot of people in early childhood know about Caring for Our Children and Caring for Our Children 3. I don't know if people are using it for their licensing. From what we can tell in our rankings, it doesn't look like it. We are hoping to push that envelope and to push the field towards quality and best practices and use this as a way to help states benchmark their licensing standards. But yeah, I don't think that it's something that states are using right now. If you hear of anyone who's doing that, we'd love to highlight them.
Yeah, it's definitely, just to add to that, it's definitely not as widespread as we'd like to see, and I think part of the reason is because states have a long road to travel, right? It takes a lot of time to get to some of these best practices. However, it's great to have this somewhat of a North Star and be able to show that progress is one area where we're looking at and how to do that, and things like the reauthorization of CCDBG, the progress that states are making since then, things like infusing QRIS and quality rating and moving the needle. A lot of the systems of quality were built from Caring for Our Children, so even if states don't know they're using some of these best practices, they're embedded within a lot of the systems.
So, yeah, feel free to ask any questions, but if we don't get any in the next couple of minutes, we'll close out. And again, like I said, this is the very beginning for us, both in terms of launching the website and in terms of continuing to make it better. So you can always ask us questions later.
Yeah, thank you all so much for joining. We look forward to working with you on round 2.
Yeah, and look for us to send you that link tonight. And let us know what you think.
Great.
Have a great day, guys.
Yeah, thanks again, everyone, for joining the call. We'll be in touch, and again, we look forward to your feedback.
Yes, thank you.
Take care.
Have a good day.
Click a box.